supplies.
Grab anything you can use as a weapon.
What are we gonna do?
There's a version of summer that only exists in memory. Block parties, bike rides, the hum of cicadas before something goes wrong. The end of Oak Street knows exactly which memory it's chasing, and it doesn't flinch when that memory turns feral.
The end of Oak Street strands the Platt family's Michigan cul-de-sac in 1982, then rips it out of its own reality and drops it somewhere prehistoric. David Robert Mitchell, the mind behind It Follows, directs, with J.J. Abrams producing, and the fingerprints of both are everywhere. Spielbergian wonder colliding with real teeth. Greg and Denise Platt are a marriage already framed before the sky opens up, and their kids are along for a survival story that doesn't soften its violence for a PG-13 rating. It's a film built entirely out of borrowed parts. Amblin awe, creature feature dread, suburban despair, and the trick is that none of those parts feel like a costume. 5 works, each one honoring a different piece of what makes Oak Street work.
Every great Amblin knockoff starts in the same place, an ordinary block, filmed like something's about to happen to it. Oak Street spends its first act in exactly that register. Kids on bikes, parents distracted, a neighborhood that doesn't know yet that it's about to become the setting of someone else's story. That's the trick of the genre. The mundane has to feel sacred before it can be destroyed. What Oak Street borrows most directly isn't a scene or a shot, it's the conviction that ordinary places are worth ripping open. Paper Girls takes the exact same bet Oak Street does. Put recognizable 1980s kids in a recognizable 1980s place, then detonate the ground under them. Brian K. Vaughan's comic follows a crew of paper route girls on Halloween morning who stumble into a time war they don't understand and definitely didn't ask for. A rupture that turns their familiar streets into something alien within pages. The comparison holds because both works refuse to treat the disruption as a mystery box to be slow-played. Paper Girls throws its cast into chaos almost immediately and lets the characters, not the plot mechanics, carry the terror and the humor. Oak Street does the same thing with its neighborhood. The cosmic rupture isn't teased for an hour, it just happens, and the Platts have to catch up in real time. What separates Paper Girls from the more obvious 80s nostalgia touchstones is that it isn't interested in referencing the decade so much as trapping believable kids from that decade in something too big for them. That's Oak Street's whole premise, just moved from panel to frame. Oak Street's monsters aren't the problem. The movie's confidence in them is. Critics keep circling back to the same observation. This is a creature feature that remembers dinosaurs used to be genuinely frightening, before decades of sequels turned them into theme park mascots. That instinct, danger with real weight behind it, doesn't come from nowhere.
I got it.
Tremors understood the assignment decades before Oak Street did. A small, isolated community suddenly under threat from something that can actually kill them, and no cavalry coming. The Graboids aren't dressed up with mythology or metaphor, they're just hungry, and the town of perfection has to get smart or get eaten. What makes the comparison land is tone as much as threat level. Tremors never loses its sense of humor, but it never lets that humor defang the danger either. Characters die, plans fail, and the creatures stay legitimately unpredictable throughout. That's the same tightrope Oak Street walks, mixing Amblin whimsy with kills that are, by multiple accounts, surprisingly brutal for the rating. Both films also share a structural patience. They trust the audience to sit with dread before the creature fully reveals itself, rather than front-loading spectacle. It's an old-school instinct that a lot of modern monster movies have forgotten, and one both of these films build their tension on. Strip away the prehistoric backdrop, and Oak Street is telling a much smaller story, a marriage that stopped working before the sky tore open. Denise wants out of a life that's shrunk to barbecues and denial. Greg wants to pretend none of that is happening. That particular kind of suburban rot has its own genre, with its own classics.
Are you gonna hit me to show me how much you love me?
Don't worry, I can't be bothered. You're not worth the trouble it would take to hit you. You're not worth the powder it would take to blow you up. You are an empty, hollow shell of a woman.
Revolutionary Road is the clearest blueprint for what's happening underneath Oak Street's family plot. Frank and April Wheeler's marriage collapses in slow motion behind a picture-perfect 1950s house, her ambitions suffocated by domestic routine, his denial curdling into something closer to cruelty. It's suburban discontent played completely straight, with no monsters required. The connection isn't just thematic, it's structural. Both stories use the wife's frustrated ambition as the emotional engine and the husband's willful blindness as the obstacle. Denise's arc echoes April's almost beat for beat. A woman who once wanted more, watching that want get smaller and smaller until circumstance forces a reckoning. Where Oak Street diverges is mercy. It eventually lets its family off the hook in a way Revolutionary Road never does. But that divergence only makes the comparison sharper. Oak Street is borrowing real marital wreckage and grafting a rescue onto it. Once the neighborhood lands wherever it lands, the Platts lose everything modern life takes for granted. No phones, no news, no way to call for help. That total severance from the outside world isn't just a plot device. It's the engine that forces every character to solve their own problems, with only their neighbors to rely on.
What are we gonna do?
Under the Dome drops an entire town into this same predicament, just without the dinosaurs. Stephen King's premise seals Chester's Mill off from the rest of civilization overnight, and the show spends its runtime watching ordinary people improvise governance, defense, and survival with zero outside help. The parallel to Oak Street is almost structural. Both stories are less interested in why the isolation happened than in what it does to a community once it's stuck there. Petty grievances become existential. Neighbors become essential. The people who seemed unremarkable at the block party turn out to be the ones who keep everyone alive. Under the Dome also shares Oak Street's interest in how quickly modern convenience evaporates once it's gone. Nobody in either story can just call for backup. They have to become the backup, fast, with whatever's already in their garages. For a film set in 1982, Oak Street is oddly disciplined about not turning every scene into a decade-spotting exercise. Critics keep noting the same thing. The period detail feels lived in rather than curated, more atmosphere than Easter egg hunt. That restraint has its own small lineage.
Stake out, search and destroy. Who's with me?
This is batshit crazy. I'm in.
Operation Mac Attack starts now.
Summer of '84 built its entire identity around that same discipline. It's unmistakably an '80s thriller. Synth score, suburban dread, kids on bikes chasing a mystery too big for them, but it earns the period through texture and mood rather than constant references pointing at themselves. That restraint is exactly what several critics praised in Oak Street. Cars, interiors, and technology that feel inhabited instead of staged for a nostalgia reel. Summer of '84 makes the same choice, letting its 1980s setting do quiet work in the background instead of constantly announcing itself. Both films also use that lived-in period feeling to sharpen the horror rather than soften it. When the setting feels real instead of curated, the danger lands harder. There's no ironic wink to retreat behind when things turn violent. 5 categories, 5 very different neighborhoods in crisis, but the same instinct running through all of them. Take something ordinary, put real stakes underneath it, and refuse to blink. Oak Street earns its place among them by doing the same thing its influences did first, and doing it with teeth.